So load balancing keeps the site up through traffic spikes and let it grow with increasing popularity of the site. The most common use of load balancing and load distribution actually. So basically, load balancers are nothing but uh, uh, a high availability solution for the web servers. Basically, it's a solution for the web front end. Okay. Apart from its work as a load distribution, so it primarily came into effect as a HA earlier. Prior to load balancers being in picture, the high availability for the web layer also was handled through these clustering softwares. Were handled through the clustering softwares. But once the load balancers came into picture, load balancers handled both the high availability as well as the load distribution part of the work for the web layer. When I say web layer, we're looking at an application which is what most applications are today, the 3-layer architecture, where there is web, your app, and your DB layer. Okay. So what does your load balancing do? Limiting point of failure. If load is balanced between two or more identical nodes, then even if one of the nodes in the cluster experiences any kind of failure, the traffic can be redistributed to the other nodes, keeping your site up. Now, load balancing between two identical nodes that can be independently handle the traffic to a site allows failure in one and keeping the other going as such. And the other one is the load distribution. As a site gains popularity, it will outgrow the power of even the robust servers and require something more than a single server configuration. Upgrading from a single server to dual server allows only so much growth. The next step is to combine the power of multiple servers. Now, the other aspect of load balancers is, I think we did discuss what is scaling, right? Until the arrival of NoSQL, the web layer, I could expand it horizontally. That means I was able to do horizontal scaling. If I as I was, I keep giving you this example of how these e-com sites, if they just wanted to handle more users, it was very simple. Just put in one more web server and attach him to the load balancer, and that's it. He's simply able to handle this whole set of additional users you want to take care of. Okay, so as the number of keeps growing, you just need to keep adding these additional web layer servers, and that's all. Now, could we do that with the DB layer? No, we couldn't. That is where when this NoSQL came. So NoSQL today can do a similar approach into how the web layer actually. Okay, so now there are two types of load balancers. I'm not sure whether if you have ever come across. So one is called the layer 3 load balancer, and the other one is called the layer 7 load balancers. And accordingly, it takes care of how the loads are balanced across your web servers. Now, how do you differentiate between a layer 4 and a layer 7 load balancer? Your layer 4 or layer 3, layer 4 load balancers handle web traffic, handle load balancers through what is called as NATing. Okay, it does some kind of address translation. I wouldn't call it NAT. It's a address translation, an IP address. So the load balancer gets a request for the access to a web server, and each load balancer will have an IP address, and this IP address are normally called as the virtual IP address. Here, as you see, each load balancer will have an IP address, and these are all the requests that are coming. And when one of the requests comes and hits the load balancer, he will then have to translate this IP address to one of these server IP addresses. Okay, so that's what the layer 3 or layer 4 load balancers do. Then how do you differentiate that between the layer 7 load balancers? Apart from load balancing, that is this translation, it also does packet inspection. When I say packet inspection, it can handle all. So you know that the HTTP protocol works at layer 7. So this guy at a layer 7 load balancer at layer 7, he can do an inspection of those packets itself in terms of session IDs. So there's something called sessions. I'm sure you would be aware of this. Every web request does not know its previous request. So you implement something called session. So apart from the general other things, so all these things would not only handle sessions, it will handle cookies. So it is much more intelligent compared to your layer 3 and layer 3/layer 4 load balancers. But the problem here is your layer 3, layer 4 load balancers is much faster compared to your layer 7. Layer 7 is slow because it does all these packet inspections and things like that. Okay, so some companies choose to implement your layer 3, 4, but some companies choose to implement layer 7. That depends on their application primarily. Now, what I know, most of the internet companies choose to prefer a layer 4 model, whereas enterprises, any of these enterprises, your large, whatever the company that may prefer to choose a layer 7 because they like to inspect all the packets that they come in. Whereas the larger companies like the Googles, Yahoos, and LinkedIn's and all prefer to use the layer 4 because it's faster. All our web servers, that is Apache, Nginx, can behave like a layer 7 load balancers without an issue. Okay, it can behave like a layer 7 load balancers without an issue. Else, that is one way. Now the other thing is you also have layer 7 appliances which you get from organizations like Citrix and other things. But from the open source, and I can tell you most of these examples, I mean most of these products from Citrix or F5 or whatever these organizations is basically an implementation of one of these things. In our class today, what we are going to do is we are going to convert an Nginx web server as a layer 7 load balancer. Okay, so this is an example of layer 7. Now, what is layer 3, layer 3/layer 4 load balancer? Now, your layer 3, layer 4 load balancer in the example. So the example is which. So now we don't use that much of this in the open source, but this is a server which comes installed with your Red Hat. It is called the Linux Virtual Server. Okay, so LVAS is your layer 4 and layer 3/layer 4 load balancer. Okay, now there is one more difference here apart from what I said earlier. Your layer 3, layer 4 load balancers work at the kernel layer. Okay, whereas layer 7 works at the user space layer. That is another difference. Okay, so I hope I've answered this. And then there was the okay. So the types are only so Kishore, is the types only 3, 4, and 7. So it is basically 3/4 and 7. Yes. So if you see the IP layers, they are actually the ISO gives you 1 to 7, whereas internet the other layer they just give it only to 5. After 4 it is 5. They combined the session, your transport, and application layer into one layer. Okay, so we have only these types. That is 3/4. Your 3/4 and your layer 7. Okay. Now, why are they called? Kishore asked a question. Why are these called? Why not 1, 2, 3, and 4 and things like that? Okay. So why are they called so? When I say when I say layer 3, layer 4, so if you take your layer 0 or layer 1, sorry, that's your physical layer. Okay, that's where your ones and zeros are working at. Your layer 2 is your bridge layer, or this is your layer at which your MAC addresses work. Layer 3 is where your IP addresses work, and layer 4 is where your TCP session works. Okay, so it's at the layer 4 where the sessions are actually established using IP. Okay, and so the whole objective of load balancers is to do what? Is to have why we call layer 3, layer 4, because here what we are basically doing is address translation, correct? An IP address comes in from one of the clients. It hits the load balancer. Each load balancer has an IP, and we call these IPs as VIPs, virtual IPs. Okay, and then this particular this particular IP then translates into an IP address of one of the servers, and then it continues. Okay, so since this is about IP translation, and when I say why we call it, the other way of saying why 3 and then why 4 is there is an IP translation. Okay, and these load balancers can also filter based on your protocol. So what are the protocols? You have your TCP, you have UDP, and there are various other, but primarily these are the two. So it also works at the protocol layer. Okay, so that's why we call them 3 and 4. And then why there is no 5? So your layers 5 and 6 are your session and presentation layer. So these days, I mean, we don't describe them, so we just combine all of them into an app layer. So beyond 4, it is an app layer. So now, but we still call that we still call it so 5, 6, and 7. And the layer 7, why? 7 is an app. When I say an app here, it doesn't mean a general app. What I mean is, see, now HTTP is a protocol, but it is a protocol working at layer 7. Okay, so that is why we call that as a layer 7 load balancer. Okay, so yeah, now this is an example. Now this the LVS router. Okay, so I should tell you, many of these load balancers which you get in the market from any of the brands, appliances, are primarily usually built of this what is called as LVS. It's a code. It's a load balancer software which is implemented within the Red Hat kernel. Okay, and as I told you, load balancers of L3 and L4 work at the kernel layer, and your L7 work at your user space layer. Okay, so it's primarily built of this. So if you had worked with Red Hat cluster, the default load balancer, what you get there is your LVS load balancer. And what I said is LVS load balancer, nothing but your layers 3/4 load balancers, which can be utilized for it. Okay. Okay. So the other thing which I missed. Okay. Apart from, I said your Nginx Apache can behave as your layer 7 protocol, the layer 7 load balancer. The other very popular the load balancer which can behave at layer 7 is your HA proxy. Okay, now what happened of a bit of late is, uh, once this Nginx had come into prominence, HA proxy kind of relegated into the backend. Today, if you, I think we discussed even last time. I think one of you have asked what. Okay. So one of you asked, I think as an example, I have a bunch of Apache servers, and can I then put in another? I think, can I put in a load balancer? I mean, it was something related with that. I think that there's an Apache service or something like that, and we can put in a. Can we put in a front end server? Now that's what has become. So today, primarily all the architectures have become kind of very similar. It's just a copycat across, I feel. They put Nginx as your layer 7, and then put Apache, any of your web servers. So primarily it's going to be Apache as your backend server, or your web server as such. Now again, in the web layer, there are two types of distributions. Okay, one is your static distribution and one is your dynamic distribution. Now, be it Nginx or Apache, both can deliver static as well as dynamic. But what we have observed in the general implementation and the architecture of each of these applications is Nginx is very good at static distribution. When I say static distribution, that means distribution of plain HTML, images, JavaScripts, etc., CSS, okay, the style sheeting, cascade style sheeting, etc. So that means if you're just creating a web page, or just not a content, just a set of web pages where you only have HTML, Nginx is the choice. But now you want to just increase that performance to now say making it a dynamic web page. Okay, so if people want to get into a dynamic web page, first I want to tell you Nginx will do the job. But for anything today dynamic, people are using Apache, and they will use Nginx in the front end to do the load distribution. So Apache, example, whether be it the standard IRCTC, which is a classic case where all your business logic, if you look at the traditional web application, you have your UI, which is your HTML, your business logic, which actually does the closing. Example, logging in. It captures a username, it captures your password, and verifies that you are the person who you're talking. And then you have the back end DB as such. So wherever there is business logic, that is primarily getting into the Apache, and if it's just static, it's just getting into your Nginx as your architecture. Now that said, earlier, before Nginx became popular, HA proxy was the product which everybody used. Now many people are just migrating to Nginx, and it's become the standard architecture. You take any of these big guys in India itself, be it your Flipkarts and OLA cabs or Snapdeals, they all go in the standard architecture. You will have Nginx to take care of your static and your load balancing. It can behave in both ways. It can load balance as well as give you static, and anything dynamic, get into your Apache layer. Okay, so that's how the architecture has been designed. So in between, I think there were a couple of questions that came. I think, yeah. So Kishore asked what is Linux Virtual Server. Kishore is the expansion of LVS. Okay. Any other questions? And today the app server as such. When we talk primarily, again, the choice of your development platform necessitates the use of app server or not. Primarily, the app server came into prominence when you use Java as your app layer. Today, with the use of other programming languages, be it your Python, Ruby, or maybe sometimes Perl, but Python and Ruby, which is the most common. These are primarily built out of Apache HTTP server. Okay, and we would not require a Tomcat or so to handle these guys. So we don't use an app server there, but Apache itself behaves as your app server, and Nginx behaves as if it's your web server. Okay, so that's how the architectures have just changed a little bit. Okay, so now the other general characteristic of any web server is it distributes a workload across a set of servers for maximum performance around. All clients connect to each and then they forward to one of the available in a round robin, or there are other defined methods. I can, you can define what percentage of hits go to one particular web server compared to other web servers. Okay, these are called the weighted options, and there are various algorithms which come into this. Like one big practice which I know happens in one of the big five guys is they always use this experimental applications. Now it could be sometimes test or sometimes a set of new features. Now during this time, what they do is they kind of isolate. You can do all this with your. This is what you do with your load balancer. You can isolate a percentage of your client connections to go to a respective set of servers. So that means I will say I want 1% of all my client connections to go to this particular test bed. Now that can be done with these other algorithms which define weightages on how you want to distribute your proxy. Okay. Now the other thing which also your load balancers do is finally it does a failure detection using heartbeats and does the specified action. Now your LB continuously pings these web servers to check their health. Okay, if it is not in good health, it will, or if it is down, it will not send any request to that. So that is another big activity of your load balancer. It keeps a check of each of its servers which are connected to it. And then based on that only it will send. Now, what I wanted to tell you also is, even prior to this load balancers coming into picture, people have also used DNS as the first layer of load balancer distribution. Now, when do you get DNS as a layer of load balancer? You might have noticed let's try this out. So if I type google.com, you can see the number of IP address I get. Okay, probably most of these are not web servers. They are actually your load balancers. Now, what happens in this kind of situation is, you can see so many load balancers are here, right? There are so many load balancers out here. Now, as you always know that we are actually we are not typing any IP address, right? We are only typing it as google.com. That means it has to hit the DNS server to get the IP address. Now, in the DNS server, we can do some kind of load balancing. Now, what happens here is it's primarily round robin. You can also do other things, but it varies. when I type, type google.com, it picks up any of these servers based on the round robin load balancer that the round robin session it maintains. What I mean to say is one name here is mapped to so many IP addresses. Okay, so DNS does that load balancing there. So the first level of load balancing which happens when you hit any of these big names is it does this DNS level load balancing. Now, why do you use DNS level load balancing? That is primarily for two aspects. One is probably to do a DR, and the other is I talked about CDN, content directory networks. Okay, they want you to go to the closest server based on your location. Okay, so it's these two aspects that are taken care of. Okay.